Hello everybody. This video will take you through installing the Rust programming language on a Windows PC. Rust is a relatively new programming language whose strengths lie in its speed and safety. Lots of coding errors, which would cause programs written in other languages to crash, are detected at compile time when written in Rust. This video won't teach you how to program in Rust. There are plenty of other good tutorials out there which teach Rust from scratch. But hopefully it's a good starting point for anyone new to setting up Rust on Windows. You may already have experience of using Rust on other platforms, for example Linux, or you might be installing Rust for the first time. Once you've installed Rust, subsequent videos will show how to make it easier to work with the Rust programming language through the setting up of an entire development environment with source code editor and source code management systems. Whatever your reasons for choosing to write code in Rust on Windows, hopefully this will give you the tools you need to develop in Rust to a professional standard. So, how do we download the Rust programming language? Just open up your browser and go to www.rust-lang.org. This is the website of the Rust programming language. On the home page, click the Get Started button. From the subsequent page, you'll see a link to the 64-bit installer. We're going to download that executable to our local downloads folder and run it from there. Now, depending on what you've already got installed on your Windows machine, you may see this screen which talks about Microsoft Visual C++ prerequisites. If you haven't got the prerequisites, it recommends the easiest way is to install the Visual C++ Build Tools 2019, and handily provides a link to download those. If we copy that to our clipboard, go back to our browser, we can see that it gives us the option to download the build tools for Visual Studio 2019. Click on the download. Again, we'll save a copy locally and run it from there. So the Visual Studio installer starts. Click on continue, and that'll take a few minutes to download the Visual Studio installer files and install them on your Windows machine. That's going to take a few minutes, so we'll come back when that's complete. Okay, so the Visual Studio installer is just about completed. And we get a list of quite a number of selections to install. If we go back to the Rust installer, it says that we need to install the Visual C++ build tools. So we'll choose the C++ build tools. The important thing on that list is the Windows 10 SDK. That's explicitly mentioned in the Rust installer. It also talks about the English language pack component. So if we check the language packs, we can see that English is selected by default. So we're going to click on install. And again, this will take a few minutes, so we'll come back when that completes. Okay, so that's taken us a few minutes to complete, but once the Visual Studio build tools are installed, we can shut down the Visual Studio installer. If we go back to the Rust installer, we can just quit out of that, and we can start that again from our downloads folder. Now we can see that the prerequisites have been met, and we see the options for installing Rust. I'm going to choose number 1, the default option. And we can see downloading the Rust binaries and installing them. And after a few minutes we're done. So enter to continue. Okay, let's open a PowerShell prompt and see what we've got. We can see it's installed version 1.43 of the Rust compiler. That's fine. Depending on when you're watching this, your version might be newer. If we take a look at the path environment variable, we can see that it's added the directory containing the Rust executables onto the path, so we don't have to specify the directory when we're invoking the Rust commands. Right, let's create a directory for some Rust source code. Create our first Rust program. So generally all Rust programs have to start with a main function. So that's just a simple Rust program. If we compile that, you see we've got hello world.exe, which just prints the words hello Rust to the screen. So we've successfully compiled our first Rust program. Okay, now we know that's working, let's go ahead and delete the source code and the executable file. Okay, so now let's take a look at Cargo. Cargo is Rust's package manager. We generally don't need to invoke the Rust compiler directly. We use Cargo to do all the work. First, let's create a new package called Hello World. Okay, what's that done? Well, let's see what's appeared in our current directory. Okay, so we've got a new subfolder with the name of the package we asked Cargo to create. And if we look at the contents, we can see it's created a number of files within that folder, along with a subfolder called src. So what are these files? We'll cover Git in a bit more detail in subsequent videos, but it's a source code management system. This file tells Git which files in the package are not to be managed by Git. If we look at the hidden files and folders in the top level of our package, we can see that there is an entire directory for the Git repository. So that's the git ignore file. Let's move on to the cargo.toml file. This contains the metadata about the package. Now let's have a look at the src subfolder. This is the Rust code in a file called main.rs. While you can have lots of Rust code source files in a cargo package, there should normally be one called main.rs. Now we can run the code using cargo run in the top level folder of the project. So it's compiled the code and run it, and we have hello world displayed in the terminal. So let's just recap on what we've achieved. We have installed the Microsoft Visual C++ build tools as a prerequisite for installing Rust. We've installed the Rust compiler and its associated package manager, Cargo. And we've compiled and run some Rust source code which we created in Notepad. But no software developer worthy of the name wants to be editing their code in Notepad. So the next video guides you through the process of setting up a development environment for Rust so we can use it to do some proper programming.